Hello and welcome to the Red Zone, the tight end analysis podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Jason Gilbo, J Gilbo 11, and we're talking about tight end matchups for Week 8. And there's been a lot of kind of chalk plays, obvious plays, great plays the last few weeks at tight ends, and this week just doesn't seem like one that has a ton of great options. But starting off here at the top, though, I'm on board with this play. Cincinnati Bengals, Tyler Eifert. Bengals have a 24-point team total. I wouldn't be surprised to see either of these teams score more than their projected totals in this game, especially if Roethlisberger does return. Steelers, just not a good secondary, not a team that's good against tight ends, and you got to imagine this is a game where both teams are going to be throwing the ball down the field, which kind of leaves Tyler Eifert as a nice high floor, big upside type of play here.
Yeah, I mean, there's no Gronk on the Sunday slate, but I think Eifert's probably the closest thing to matching like a Gronk-type line this week. Pittsburgh ranks 20th against, opposing tight ends per Football Outsiders there. His price tag is not bad at all. He kind of fits into any lineup you're working with. I'm really afraid to fade him this week. I think he just has a ton of upside, and if you go a different way, I think he could burn you if he has a big day.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, probably going to see some Ryan Shazier, who many times since his debut in the NFL likes to tackle like Manti Te'o. So we know how that goes. Just not a guy he just hasn't panned out in the NFL yet. Just has not looked good. I mean, really, a lot of that front seven just has had some struggles at times there. So next up, Martellus Bennett from the Bears. Obviously, Alshon Jeffrey is back, but like you mentioned here, that's almost probably a good thing for Martellus Bennett, where it takes a little bit less of pressure off, because obviously when Jeffrey was out, you can kind of key on Bennett. He's not a downfield threat necessarily, especially with lack of speed, but he's a big target. He's a guy that Jay Cutler trusts a lot, and it's a Bears offense that's finally starting to get going here. So Martellus Bennett, especially as much of a red zone threat as he is, you got to like his perspective this week.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Bears, they're finally healthy altogether. Jeffrey back. They're fantasy friendly. I mean, they have a ton of options and really great prices this week, especially Jeffrey. But, Bennett doesn't have a terrific grade there, but still one of the better tight ends in the league. Saw 11 targets when Jeffrey was back this past week, or 2 weeks ago off the bye week. I think if you are going to swerve from Eifert in cash games, I think Bennett's a pretty safe play, especially on DK, where, he seems to get a little more receptions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, DK, like you mentioned, the full PPR, so that's definitely nice. Next up, value plays, Ladarius Green. We know the Chargers throwing and a ton of passes this year. Probably nothing going to change anytime soon. Melvin Gordon got benched. He's been ineffective. Danny Woodhead's been back there. He doesn't really run much. He's more of a pass-catching back. And Green last week, just 4 catches for 45 yards, but he did have a touchdown. He also caught 2 two-point conversions. And, this one, if there's going to be a shootout this week, this is the one. Making tentative cash game lineups, tournament lineups, I just kept clicking Chargers and Ravens into my lineups. And it makes a lot of sense that, you target Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, you target this game, and you're probably going to be in pretty good shape, because both these games should be pretty high scoring.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. It looks like Antonio Gates is going to be out this week again, still hasn't practiced, and that knee looks like it's probably going to be an issue for possibly even the rest of the season if it keeps coming back. So, Green doesn't have a too high of a floor or a ceiling there, but for 3,000 on DK, you can't really knock that. You can open up a ton of cap space with him in there. As for FanDuel, I'm still leaning towards Eifert, just because I think his upside is just too high for me to come away from. But on DK, he's probably the best value play at tight end.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense there. Next up, Delaney Walker for the Titans. You mentioned here you like him more on DK than FanDuel, of course, with a full point PPR. Zach Mettenberger last week was kind of a disappointment as a value play, but Delaney Walker wasn't bad. 7 catches for 55 yards, and he's a guy that's been a consistent option in this offense for years, regardless of who's been under center. They look to him a lot on third down. They look to him at times in the red zone. And every once in a while he gets a ball thrown down the field to him as well. So he's a guy that probably won't see a lot of ownership this week, but he probably has one of the better floors of any tight end on this slate, though.
Yeah, I think so, too. Hopefully I'm banking on Mariota to come back. Hopefully that's the case, because I do feel a little bit better with Walker there. But even if Mettenberger, 7 for 55, not a bad option there with the full point PPR on DK. Houston, they haven't been great on defense, as we saw last week. But I expect this one to be I mean, not a true shootout, but I think there will be some points on the board.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Jason Witten next for the Cowboys. Cowboys offense, like you mentioned, you say abysmal. That's probably kind to say that, but looks like Des Bryant will be back this week. He's back practicing. It's a tough matchup against Seattle, but if you've been watching the NFL this year, you know Seattle's Achilles heel has been the tight end position, giving up some huge games. Tyler Eifert had a huge game against them. They've just really struggled with tight ends, and especially with an offense that's struggling to find consistency, targeting the one weakness that defense has, especially just even in the short passing game, makes a lot of sense. And you expect they're probably going to be behind in this one, throwing the ball, and we've seen Witten put up points in a hurry in the fast-paced come from behind type of offense for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, he took a pretty big jump. He had 6 receptions last week for 75 yards. And, you said Seattle's even a worse defense against tight ends than New York is, and they're pretty bad as well. So we did see a jump against with Matt Castle back there. I think Des Bryant does open things up a little bit because really no one else has been a factor in that passing game. But really such a true GPP play just because he's so closely priced to the other big names, and his recent production doesn't really match his current price.
Yeah, no, not at all there. Next up, Benjamin Watson, a guy who had that random huge performance 2 weeks ago, but followed up with a respectable line last week as well. And as we know, throughout his career, Drew Brees has looked to the tight end a lot. Obviously, for quite a while there, he had Jimmy Graham. Benjamin Watson never has been, nor will he ever be, Jimmy Graham. But he is a big target, a guy that's got good hands. You can trust him to make plays when you throw the ball his way. He's gotten some looks in the red zone as well, so you're certainly not looking for, him to go over 100 yards or anything crazy like that here. But, like you mentioned here, 6 for 80 and a touchdown isn't really far-fetched in this matchup.
No, I think so too. I mean, you look at Witten, what he did against the Giants last week. Let's add a touchdown onto that, and that's a pretty solid line for Watson. He's gotten 22 targets in the last 3 games. I think that's pretty good. Breeze back at home in the Dome where he plays a lot better. His splits are not severe, but there is a noticeable difference. And they're a 26.5 point total there, so I can't see guys like Cooks and Snead finding the end zone much. It'll probably be Ingram and Watson there, if anything.
Yeah, and even when we saw the Saints running game really, really effective last week, they still relied on the pass a lot more. Even though Mark Ingram averaged about 10 yards a carry, it was still pass first. So it seems to me that even if Ingram continues to have success, this is still always going to be a pass first offense as long as Drew Brees is under center. So, all right, that's going to wrap things up here for us this week. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out the rest of our content for NBA, NFL, college football, NHL, a little bit of everything here at Daily Fantasy Cafe. So make sure you check all that out while you're here, and we'll see you next time.